Marianne, for those of you who haven't met. Christians in Israel, it's a very broad heading, and I'm really not going to talk about who could possibly undertake in 10 minutes to talk about Christians in Israel. But what I will talk about are a few of the people that we met and a little bit of what we came to understand as life for Christians in Israel. There were three things, I think, in just pondering what are three hooks that we can hang part of what we experienced of three words. One was hospitality. I think the Christians that we met were very hospitable people, and I think that has to be one of the hallmarks for us as Christians, that Jesus was a person of great hospitality. God extends great hospitality, and certainly the Christians in Israel were people of great hospitality. But people of hope, I don't think that we can begin to imagine what it is like for them to live in a country that is beset by such difficulties. I mean, we think we have problems here, but I think that they're nothing, clearly, in comparison with life for Christians in Israel. So, hope. And the other thing is always the potential for healing, that as we go on and see a few photos of people, and just consider the situation, that as difficult as it might seem, the hope is based in this possibility of healing in all kinds of ways, healing for a nation, healing for individuals who are caught up in the difficulties of living in Israel. I couldn't resist, though. Jamie showed you photos from the bus as we arrived in Jordan, but I think that the image at the top serves to perhaps begin to introduce the contrast between what it's like for Arab people living in the Middle East and those who aren't. But just a few interesting things about the Jordanian church. It actually began very early. Jordanian church, very early. The guides that Greg engages to take us around, so not only in Jerash but all the places were Christian guides. A lot of them were university trained, didn't have work. A lot of them finding themselves working as tour guides. So what are two girls from Brisbane going to, what is it that we can possibly learn from being in this country, being by this idyllic lake that everyone has heard about? What is it that we can learn about being Christians in a place like Israel? Because in contrast to standing by the lake and enjoying all the joys of being on holidays, it wasn't holidays, of course it wasn't holidays, but being away and being in this wonderful place, to remember to then be confronted with the reality that life isn't difficult. Life is really difficult. That statement is actually by a Jewish woman, an Australian Jewish woman, and I just thought, there'd be thousands of statements that we could find that would sum up the situation for the Arab-speaking people in that part of the world, but I think that sums it up. But then she goes on to say in the Middle East we have two deeply traumatized people. I'd beg to suggest that I think most people, whatever their background in the Middle East, are traumatized in some way because of the situation. She also would suggest that both whatever group you belong to, in some way you're a victim. In another way, you're possibly part of a group that is the one who victimizes. That's not quite right. And so therefore, I suggest there is a need, and I guess this is the question, isn't it? That there needs to be a way ahead where, for all groups, for all religions, for people of all ethnic backgrounds, there's a win-win where people can live in Israel together. So Hebrew, Arabic, Christian, trying to live together in a country with such a mix of ethnic backgrounds, such a diverse history, beset by conflict over the centuries, and yet I think one of the things that I found surprising, especially in Jerusalem, is to understand that there have actually been times of peace, and that Muslims have lived alongside Christians, lived alongside Jews, and experienced times of peace. So about 80% of Christians in Israel are Arabic. The Christian population isn't growing so much from Christians who are in Israel at the moment, but more people coming into the country, and there's certainly an influence from Russia. The proportion of Christians of the overall population, I think probably around 6%. Does that sound right, Greg?
It used to be 6%, it's now less than 1%.
Now less than 1%. So yes, I wondered whether what I'd said was out of date. That's not very many. And so then of that 1%, about 32% Orthodox. Most of the rest would be Catholic, and of the Catholics, sort of nearly half Melkite. This is a very broad statement, and I'm not sure that it's something that we would want to publish, but perhaps this is something that we gleaned as we travelled. Religious Jews, radical Muslims have a third world demographic. Secular Jews and Palestinians have a first world demographic, and by that talking about size of families and just attitude towards family size, essentially. In the library, there's this great book, Palestinian Christians in Israel, State Attitudes Towards Non-Muslims in a Jewish State. That would be a really good book to find when you are about to prepare your presentation, not the morning of when it's just about done. However, I'd recommend it to you. It's up in the library. After I've had a good look at it, it will be available, but it does look like it would make very interesting reading. The other book that I think just in terms of getting a sense of the Arab-Israeli conflict, a guide for the perplexed. I'm going to very briefly just look at worshipping with a congregation in Haifa, the Anglican congregation in Haifa, and then our experience in Nazareth very quickly. So Haifa, this is actually the view down the street standing outside the Anglican church in Haifa. You can have it see that. So the Diocese of Jerusalem covers 5 countries, 30 parishes. I think most of you are familiar with that. And clearly looking at opportunities, as in Brisbane, for the mission of the church to become expressed in a broad range of ways. Church in Haifa, and here we have Hatem
Shahada.
with one of the elderly members of the congregation. Most of the people typically they were older people in the congregation. A lovely man, lovely. He preached. We were actually blessed with 2 sermons that morning. One was preached by the Reverend Dr. Greg Jenks from Brisbane, Australia, and he preached from John 14:15 and about what the Spirit is saying to the church, that the Spirit is forming the character of Jesus in us, that the Spirit is speaking to the church to guide us into the work of Jesus in this time and this place. That was very timely for us. And that the Spirit is speaking and giving us the gifts that we need for mission, which led very beautifully into the next sermon that we heard in Arabic, translated into English from Proverbs 12. But one of the things that Hatem said that I think was so important for us to hear, that millions of Christians come each year to Israel and visit the holy sites, but leave without being changed. Proverbs 20:12 is talking about seeing and hearing, and he said, stones and coins don't see and hear, and he was encouraging us to think of the Christians in Israel as being living stones and to engage with them as living stones who see and hear. The ministry of this particular parish, very much the same as you'd expect the ministry of any parish church, but then the vision is very distinctive. There's a school attached to the church and a playgroup. Clearly they're trying to appeal to that there is a ministry to children. That's Hatem's wife, and her name is
Lisa.
Lisa. I can say that. Lisa. And her friend, I think, was Maggie, and she was a very, she'd been a member of the congregation since she was little. Hospitality, great hospitality, and there we all are. It was a wonderful morning. However, if the Christian population in Israel is less than 1%, the Anglicans would be a little dot. It's going to Nazareth, seeing the Christian church in a slightly bigger perspective, very much Franciscan influence. Our beautiful friend Sahar.
This one's Rula.
That's Rula. That's Sahar.
That's Sahar.
Sahar. I'm trying, Marie-Louise. I'm trying really, really hard. Greg and Clay are going to talk a little bit more about Seville, but both those girls, and I just want to show you their faces again, because I reckon they're faces of hope. They really are faces of hope. These girls spent quite a bit of time with us, and it was a wonderful privilege to get to know them a little. Yes, Greg and Clay are going to talk about Seville. Catherine thought it was a great idea that we all go down to the procession of the Festival of Lights at the Basilica of the Annunciation, which we did on the Saturday night. So we arrived early and thought we might be the only ones. But sure enough, within half an hour, several hundred people arrived. We had our candles and we were singing our praises to Mary for the next hour or so. And it was great. It was great to be there with people from all around the world. So again, as opposed to the congregation in Haifa that was really local people, this was a local congregation but engaging with Christians from around the world, every continent, except there weren't any polar bears there, but every continent. It was great. And I think what was really interesting is that several hundred people, 400 people, and the worship band consisted of guitar and a couple of singers. And that was it. So I thought that was a really interesting observation, and they led really well. Another project of Christians in Nazareth is Nazareth Village. And Nazareth Village is a very popular tourist attraction, but again, local Christians really trying to portray the Christian message and to relate the iconic things that people go to Israel to visit with the story. I'm the light of the world. Everyone who leaves gets a little clay lamp. So back to Jerusalem, looking out over the city, how do we reconcile the differences of so many different cultures, the three major religions? Back in the chapel at St George's College, which Frank's going to take up on, it was like coming home to a haven each evening to think about where we'd been and what we'd done, and just to... Stefan had a great story about his kneeler that he was on his chair when we first arrived at St Francis. At St George's, that's for another day. But the kneeler that I just happened to have at my seat was the St Francis one, which was lovely. So again, in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, or the Church of the Resurrection, there's people light candles, and there's worship happening 24 hours around the clock. Hospitality, hope, healing. Surely they're the things that as Christians in Israel have to offer